All right, hi everybody. So today I am going to be going through these 6 questions that you guys saw at the end of yesterday's class. So remember from yesterday's class, you guys had some time to practice this independently. Now, if you didn't get to all of them, or if you had any questions about one or two or three of them, this is your chance to understand how to do these, as well as just get some extra practice for how to solve these types of systems of equations. Now, if you did all of them yesterday already, and you know you have them all correctly, just watch through this video because everybody, as you watch, I'm going to be asking 5 mystery questions throughout this mini lesson. And I'm going to need you guys to answer those 5 mystery questions in the Google form that is in the description below, as well as I linked it in your assignment where your assignment is written down. So as I go through this mini lesson, I'll be asking you 5 questions. Make sure that you submit your answers to those 5 questions because that will be your grade. Now, it should be a very easy A as long as you're just paying attention, listening to me, and making sure that you're writing down these notes. So let's go ahead and get started with the first example. This was example A. So I've got my system. First thing I want to do is try to see, okay, which variable is going to be the easiest one to get alone, to get by itself. And there's actually 3 good answers. You can get this x all alone, this y over here, or this y over there. All of those are good options. It doesn't really matter which one you choose. So for the purposes of this class, I'm just going to choose a random one. Let's go ahead and solve, let's go ahead and solve for x. So I'm going to try and get this x from equation A all by itself. So I write down equation A, x plus y equals 21. And to get x all alone, all I need to do is get rid of that y. That y needs to go away. And in order to do that, I subtract. So when I subtract y on both sides, I end up with x equals 21 minus y. Okay, that's the value of x. Now I did step 1, I can move on to step 2. For step 2, I'm going to have to plug that 21 minus y into equation B. Since I started with equation A, you always want to plug it into whichever one you didn't do. So since I started with A, I'm plugging it into B. B is 2x equals 33 plus y. Now I'm going to be plugging this in for x because that is the variable that I isolated. So in my equation B, I put in these parentheses, and into those parentheses, I'm going to go ahead and just copy down 21 minus y. That's all I do in my first step. Well, now I have a little equation here that I'm going to solve. I'm going to figure out what is the value of y. So the first thing I need to do is distribute this 2. 2 times 21 is 42. 2 times negative y is negative 2y. And here is my equation. 42 minus 2y equals 33 plus y. I'm trying to solve for y. I need to get y all by itself. And I notice that I have a y on both sides of my equation. Well, that's not going to be very useful. I need to bring the one that's on the right over to the left. So the way to do that is to subtract by y on both sides. Those cross out, and I'm left with 42. Now I got to do negative 2 minus 1, because that's technically a 1. Negative 2 minus 1 is negative 3y equals 33. Okay, now I need to get y all by itself, so the next step is going to be to subtract 42 on both sides. Here, I need to do 33 minus 42. Now, I have 33, I'm taking away 42. I'm going to end up with a negative number. And when you do the math, you should end up with negative 9. So negative 3y equals negative 9. Now I divide by negative 3 on both sides. Negative 9 divided by negative 3, a negative divided by a negative is a positive, so I get y equals 3. Step 2 is complete. Now that I have that answer, I can plug that number back into one of my original equations. Now you always want to pick whichever equation is a little bit simpler, a little bit more easy to work with. And it looks like equation A is just a little bit more simple. So that's the one I'm going to plug it into. All I do is I replace my y with a 3. And now I'm going to solve for x. All I have to do is subtract 3 from both sides. Okay, so 21 minus 3, that'll give me my final answer, and I get 18. So I've got my x, I've got my y. My solution is the coordinate point that puts them together. So this is going to be 18, comma 3. That's my answer for problem A. Now I'm going to pause here, make sure that you've copied this down, see if there's any places where you might have made a mistake, or if you're not completely sure how I got that answer, just check your work. And at this time, I'm going to ask you your mystery question number 1. So go ahead, you can pause the video or just go over to the Google form that I've linked below in the description, as well as in your instructions for today's assignment. And question number 1 is, tell me, what is your favorite animal or pet? So for me, my favorite animal is a cat. I have a kitten. His name is Cosmo. He's my favorite. So go ahead and answer question number 1 for me. What is your favorite pet? And now let's move on to problem B. Okay, problem B is a little different. Let me draw my bracket. Problem B is a little bit different because if you notice, step 1 is supposed to be to isolate one of the variables. I'm supposed to try to get one of those variables all alone, but take a look. Y is already isolated for you. You actually can skip step 1. Step 1 is already done for you. So since that y is already all alone, I can go ahead and go to step 2, which is to plug that negative 6x plus 8 into equation B. So let me start by writing down equation B. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to replace the y with negative 6x plus 8. Okay, so essentially what happened is we just skipped step 1 and went straight to step 2. And from there, I'm going to, same as always, I'm going to solve for my variable, for x. Now, technically, this y had a 1 in front of it, which means there's a 1 right here in front of my parentheses. So I am distributing. It's just that I'm multiplying by 1, which doesn't really change any of the values. So I really just end up with 3x minus 6x plus 8 equals negative 4. Next, I'm going to combine like terms. I have 3x minus 6x. 3 minus 6 is negative 3. And I bring everything else down. Now to get x by itself, I'm going to have to subtract by 8 on both sides. Which leaves me with negative 3x equals, now, negative 4 minus 8. I'm getting more and more negative, so you can, in your head, what you're really going to do is you're going to add those numbers. So 4 plus 8 is 12, but I know it's negative, so it's going to be negative 12. And then finally, I'm solving for x. I'm dividing by negative 3 on both sides. I end up with x equals positive 4. Negative 12 divided by negative 3 is positive 4. So there's my value for x. Step 2 is complete. Step 3, I plug that number back into one of my original equations. Equation A is a little bit simpler than equation B because that y is already by itself. So I can basically just plug in a 4 for x, and then solve. Negative 6 times 4 is negative 24. And negative 24 plus 8, so think about it, you are starting at negative 24 and then you're adding 8, so it's going to become less negative. You kind of, if you're on an elevator, you'd be going up. So my final answer is negative 16. All right, so in this case, my solution, I have one solution, which is 4 comma negative 16. Awesome. So pause here if you need to catch up and finish writing down the answers. And also, I'm going to go ahead and ask mystery question number 2. So you can go to that Google form to fill in your answer for question number 2. Question number 2 is, what is your favorite color? I actually have 2 favorite colors. If you have more than one, you can write more than one. My 2 favorite colors are like a lightish blue as well as like a lilac purple. So I like blue and purple. But go ahead and tell me what your favorite color is in the Google form for mystery question number 2. Alrighty, moving right along to problem letter C. Okay, this one is a little bit more like what we're used to seeing. Now in this case, I always want to think about which variable is easiest to isolate. I noticed that this y has a negative 3, this x has a 4 in front of it, and this y has a negative 12 in front of it. So none of those are good candidates. Instead, I'm going to want to isolate this x because it's already pretty close to being alone. So that's going to be my first step. I go to equation A, and I'm trying to just get that x all alone. In order to do so, I'm going to have to add 3y to both sides. And I'm adding because remember, you always want to do the opposite of what you see. Since I was subtracting 3y, we're going to add it in order to cancel it out. And this leaves me with x equals 6 plus 3y. Step 1 is complete. Step 2. Step 2, I'm going to take my answer from equation A and plug it into equation B. And in this case, I'm plugging it in for x. So I'm going to write down equation B. Okay, and I'm going to plug in my values for x. I plug in 6 plus 3y. And from here, I need to solve for y. I need to try to figure out what is the value for y. So as usual, my first step is going to be to distribute. 4 times 6 is 24. 4 times 3 is 12y. And now I need to combine like terms. I have positive y and I have negative y, 12y. Positive 12y and negative 12y. 12 minus 12 is 0. So I end up with 24 plus 0 equals 24. 24 plus 0 is just 24. So here's my final answer. 24 equals 24. Does 24 equal 24? Yeah, for sure. 24 definitely equals 24. So this is a true statement. And since it's a true statement, this tells me that I have infinite solutions. Infinite solutions. Now, on a graph, what that means is that the two equations, the two lines, line A and line B, are located right smack on top of one another. They are the same exact line. They have the same slope, the same y-intercept, the same x-intercept, the same everything. They match up completely. which is why they have infinite solutions, because they're intersecting all the time. All right, so that was problem number letter C. And since we got to our final answer, we didn't even get to step 3. We do not need to do step 3. We can end at this point. We are done. Infinite solutions is my final answer. All right, pausing here for mystery question number 3. Mystery question number 3 is, tell me one thing you feel good about in algebra. Anything at all that we've learned so far in this class that you feel good about. It might be solving equations, it might be linear functions, it might be what we learned right before the break, which was statistics. You might feel really good about negatives and positives. You might feel really good about fractions. Just tell me one thing that you feel very good about in algebra, and that would be your answer to mystery question number 3. Okay, moving right along. Problem D. Problem D is kind of similar to problem C. There's only one variable that's going to be easy for us to isolate. It's not the x, it's not the other x, it's not the y, because all of these 3 have numbers in front of them. They have coefficients. So rather than those, I want to isolate this guy right there, because he's already pretty close to being alone. Okay, label my equations. Starting with this equation. All right, trying to get y all alone, and I have a negative 3x, so think to yourself, should I add 3x or should I subtract 3x? And what I want to do is I want to add 3x to both sides. Because again, you want to do the opposite. Since the 3 was negative, we're adding. So I'm left with y equals 12 plus 3x. Step 1 is done. Step 2. Now I take what I got as my answer and I plug it into the other equation. Since I got my answer from equation A, I will be plugging it into equation B. Okay, I go ahead and I'm going to plug in for y this time. Since I solved for y, that's what I'm plugging it in for. And just like the previous examples, my next step is going to be to distribute. I have 6x, then negative 2 times positive 12 will be negative 24, and negative 2 times positive 3 will be negative 6x equals 18. Next step is to combine like terms. I have 6x and negative 6x. Well, 6 minus 6 is 0. They cancel out. I end up with 0 minus 24 equals 18. 0 minus 24 is negative 24. So I have negative 24 equals 18, but hold up. Negative 24 does not equal 18. Therefore, this is no solution. Now, on a graph, what does that mean? That means that equation A and equation B are never going to meet up. That means that they are parallel lines. And parallel lines have the same slope. They have the same slope. So that's what this is telling me, that these two equations, they're never going to meet. There's no way for them to touch. So that's why we have no solution. And again, just like when we had infinite solutions, we are done at step 2. We do not need to continue on to step 3. We're done. Okie dokes. Almost there. We got 2 more to go. But at this time, let me pause for mystery question number 4. Mystery question number 4 is, What is one goal that you have for yourself for algebra this year? So we're in a new year. Hopefully you guys made some New Year's resolutions. What is one goal that you have for yourself for this year? It could be anything. It could be what grade you want to get. It can be how many homework assignments you want to make sure you complete. It could have to do with paying attention during class a little bit more, something that you just want to improve upon, a goal that you have for yourself for my class. Go ahead and answer that under mystery question number 4. All right. Now we're on to example, what is this, E? I think this is E. All right, example E is actually pretty similar to example B, I think it was, because in this example, see if you can notice before I write it down, one of these two equations is already has a variable that is isolated. So we can actually skip step 1. So look at it for yourself. Which of these variables is already alone? It's this y right there. He's already alone on one side of the equal sign. So we skip step 1 and we can go right to step 2. Step 2, I'm going to take 2x minus 3 and I'm going to plug it into equation B. I will be plugging it in for y, okay, because that's the variable that we have isolated. Okay, so I have 2x minus 3. And from there, just like all this is probably getting very repetitive for you, we're following those same exact steps. I start with my distribution. I have 4x. Now, negative 3 times positive 2 is negative 6. Negative 3 times negative 3 is positive 9. Equals 31. Combining like terms, 4x minus 6x is negative 2x. I need to solve for x. I'm going to subtract 9 on both sides. And I'm left with negative 2x equals, okay, 31 minus 9, that's going to be 22. 22. Now, finally, I can divide both sides by negative 2. And since I'm dividing by negative 2, I get x equals negative 11. That's my answer for step 2. Now I can move on to step 3. In this case, since I definitely got an answer, there's no solution, it's not infinite solutions, I got an actual answer, I can move on to step 3. Step 3, I'm going to plug that number, negative 11, back into one of my original equations. Doesn't matter which one. I'm going to choose equation A because it looks a little bit more simple. So here we go. Y equals 2 times negative 11 parentheses minus 3. 2 times negative 11 is negative 22. And negative 22 minus 3 gets more negative. That's going to be negative 25. Final answer, final solution is negative 11 comma negative 25. My two lines, when I put them on a graph, they will intersect at negative 11 comma negative 25. There we go. That is my answer for problem, what are we on, E? Problem E. Which brings me to my very last mystery question. Here's my very last question for you guys. What are you most excited for this year? It does not have to do with algebra, doesn't even have to do with school, but in general, what are you looking forward to the most in the year 2021? I want to hear what you got for me. I'm excited to hear all these things that you guys are telling me, by the way. Like, I love these mystery questions because it gets me to learn a little bit more about you. So go ahead and tell me, what are you most excited for this year? take a moment, you can pause, and then come right back. Make sure that you submit that Google form as soon as you're done with your 5 mystery questions. And let's do our final problem together. Alrighty, y'all. All right, so here it looks like there's 2 good candidates for isolation. I can isolate the y from equation A or the y from equation B because both of them are alone. And I think I'm going to go with equation B just because we usually don't do equation B, so it's good to do an example where we start with equation B. All right, trying to get y by itself, all I got to do is subtract 2x from both sides. Get him to the other side, make him go away. And this leaves me with y equals 5 minus 2x. All right, so there's my answer for step 1. Done with that. Step 2. Plugging that in, careful, since we just worked with equation B, now I have to plug this into equation A, to the other one. Okay, so I go to my equation A. I have 5x plus y equals 8. I'm going to take what I got in the first step and plug it in for the letter y, for my y variable, since that's what we solved for. So I have 5x plus, I'm going to put my parentheses, 5x plus 5 minus 2x equals 8. Same as always, I go ahead and I solve. Now, this is kind of like the first problem we did together, where there's technically an invisible little 1 over here, so there's an invisible little 1 outside of the parentheses. But basically what happens is when you multiply anything times 1, you end up with the same answer. So I can basically get rid of my parentheses. I have 5x plus 5 minus 2x equals 8. I combine like terms. 5x minus 2x. 5 minus 2 is 3x. 3x plus 5 equals 8. Subtracting 5 from both sides, I end up with 3x equals 3. Dividing by 3 on both sides, 3 divided by 3 is 1. I get x equals 1. Okay, I take that 1 and I plug it back into one of my original equations. It does not matter which one. Let's go with A for no particular reason. They both kind of look simple. So I'm just going to go with A. 5x plus y equals 8. I know that x is 1. So I just plug that right in. 5 times 1 is 1. All I got to do is take it away from both sides to get my final answer. 8 minus 5 is 3. There we go. Y equals 3. My solution, I have one solution, and it is 1, 3. All right, my friends, we are done with these 6 problems. So at this time, here's what's going to happen. Make sure that you submit your Google form because I am grading it. Now, it should be a very easy A because the mystery questions were very easy questions. So it is basically my way of making sure that you paid attention throughout this lesson. If you already did the Khan Academy, then you are done with this video. However, if you're still not done with Khan Academy and you're having some trouble with it, what I'm going to do from this point in this video is go through a couple of examples from the homework. So this is only keep watching if you need a little bit of extra help with the homework. If you're done with Khan Academy, you are free to go on to the next part of today's assignment. If you want to watch and continue watching to just get a little bit of extra help, go ahead and continue watching. So I'm going to do 2 of the examples from the homework at this time. All right, so this is exactly what you guys were working on in your homework assignment. So let's go. Okay, so in the homework assignment, you get 2 equations like this one. So I have y equals negative 2x minus 5 and y equals 2x minus 2. And then you're either going to have some answer choices like this, or you'll have to put the answer in yourself. And then underneath that, there's always going to be these graphs. And these graphs, you can actually move them around, okay? And the point is that you should try to graph the two equations from the problem in order to figure out where the solution is going to be. So I have these two equations. They're both in slope-intercept form. They're both in y equals mx plus b, which is really good because that means I don't have to do a whole lot of work. All I need to do is identify the slope. So in this one, the slope is negative 2. And in this one, the y-intercept is negative 5. Now on my other equation, the slope is positive 2, and the y-intercept is negative 2. And what I can do with this is now I can use that information to graph my two equations. So I'm going to start with the top equation. I know that the y-intercept is negative 5. So I'm going to go to my graph. I'm going to do the blue one, okay? And I'm going to put one of these dots on the negative 5. It's all the way down here, okay? Now let me go back. My y-intercept was negative 5. My slope is negative 2. Now the slope tells you where to go next. So what you can do, since this is a whole number, is we're always going to put a whole number over 1. So that negative 2 is the same as negative 2 over 1. Now what that tells me, this is my rise, and this is my run. What that means is that I'm going to be going down 2 units. Since it's negative, I go down. Since that one is positive, I go to the right. So this is to the right 1 unit. Okay, so I'm going down 2 units and then 1 unit to the right. So let's go back to my graph. What I'll do is I'll take this other dot, okay, and I go down 2 units and then 1 unit to the right. There we go. I'm done with that blue line. All I had to do was I started with my y-intercept, I take the other point, and I figure out where to go next. So that blue line is done. Now I'm going to do the same thing with, hold up, I'm going to do the same thing with my red graph, or purplish red graph. In this case, my y-intercept is negative 2. So similarly, I'm going to go down to my graph, and I'm going to put one of those dots on the negative 2, right there. Then my slope is positive 2. What that means, again, you can put this as 2 over 1. My rise is positive this time, so that means I'm going to go up 2 units. My run is also positive, so I go to the right 1 unit. So I'm going to go back to my graph, and from the negative 2, I'll go up 2 units and then 1 unit to the right. Okay, so up 2 units and then 1 unit to the right. There is my graph, and let me zoom in a little bit, and my solution, let me erase all of this, hold up 1 second. Okay, my solution is right over here, right over there, which looks like we're going to kind of have to estimate it a little bit. It's a little bit less than negative 1. It's a little bit less than negative 1, and it's a little bit more, it's a little bit past this negative 3. So if I had to estimate, I would say probably like negative 0.9, maybe, comma, negative 3.5. Like it's a little bit like between the 3 and the 4. So I'm going to look for the answer choice that best matches that answer. Okay. So let's see, negative 3. Yeah, this answer choice A looks pretty good. -3/4, comma, -3.5. Yeah, that looks pretty close. That looks good to me. I think it's answer choice A. Let's check. Good. All right. So I'm going to do one more example. And so, okay, for this one, you have to actually put the numbers in. So it's not multiple choice anymore. You have to actually enter those values. But we're going to do the same exact strategy. So I start with my first equation. Here, my y-intercept is 3. My slope is -7. So I'm going to start by putting a dot on the +3. And my slope tells me this is -7/1. Since it's a negative, I'm going down 7 units. Since my 1 is positive, I'm going to the right 1 unit. Okay, so I'm going to put 1 dot on the 3, and then I'm going to go 7 units down and 1 unit to the right. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, I put 1 dot right here on the 3. And hold up. Okay, there we go. And then my other dot, if it wants to move, there we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 units to the 7 units down, and then 1 unit to the right. There's my blue line. Red line, purple, whatever color that is. Hold on. Line that up. Okay. This one. My y-intercept is -3. My slope, it says -x, but remember that negative is really a -1. So my slope is -1. So again, I'm going to start on the -3 because that's my y-intercept. And my slope is the same as -1/1. So this tells me I'm going down 1 unit and then 1 unit to the right. Okay, so for this one, I'm going to start on the -3, then I'll go 1 unit down and 1 unit to the right. Okay, put my first dot on the -3, then I go 1 unit down, 1 unit to the right. There it is. There are my 2 lines. It looks like they're meeting up at this point right here. Let me erase all this. Okie dokes. Okay, so it looks like we're meeting at 1, -4. So that means that my x is 1 and my y is -4. So let me go ahead and put that in. And I got it. Cool. So let me actually just look at the next question because yes, okay. I figured this one would come up next. You might get a question like this one where the 2 equations are in standard form. Now that's going to be a little bit different. So I'll do one more. I'll do this one as well. So this equation, both of them are in standard form. So what happens is I don't know the slope, I don't know the y-intercept, so I have to use a different strategy. What you're going to do, let's start with equation A. I have 8x minus 4y equals 16. What you're going to do is you're going to plug in a 0 for x, and then later on a 0 for y. So I'm going to start by plugging in a 0 for my x. What happens is I cancel out that value. 8 times 0 is 0. I'm left with -4y equals 16. And what I can do to both sides is divide by -4. This gives me y equals 16 divided by -4 is -4. Now, what exactly is that? That is the y-intercept of equation A. So that means that there's going to be a dot at 0, -4. And just like I said before, what we're also going to do is plug in a 0, this time for y. So I plug in a 0 for y. It cancels out. I got 8x equals 16. I divide both sides by 8. I end up with x equals 16 divided by 8 is 2. Well, that's not the y-intercept anymore. This is my x-intercept. This is the x-intercept of equation A, which means I have a point at 2, 0. So once you have those two answers, you can go to the graph, and I'm going to put a point at -4 on the y-axis and a point at +2 on the x-axis. So let me go ahead and do that. I put a point on the -4 right here, and on the +2 right there. Okay, just like I did. So just like I said, 0, -4 and 2, 0. So that was my blue graph. Now I'm going to do the same thing with my other graph, with graph or line B, equation B. Same exact strategy. I go ahead, let me erase what I have here. So I'm looking at equation B this time. Ooh, why did that all come back? That was weird. Okay, equation B, 8x plus 4y equals 16. I'm going to plug in a 0 for x. That crosses out. I have 4y equals 16. I divide both sides by 4. I end up with y equals 16 divided by 4 is +4. So the y-intercept is 0, 4. Now I do it for x-intercept. But what that means is I have to plug in a 0 for y. Okay, so I plug in my 0, cancels out. I got 8x equals 16. Divide both sides by 8. I get x equals 16 divided by 8 is 2. That is the x-intercept, 2, 0. Cool. So I'm going to be putting a dot on the +4 of the y-axis and on the +2 of the x-axis. And as it turns out, that looks to be where they meet up. They meet up at the x-intercept on the x-axis at 2, 0. So what that means is that my x value is 2 and my y value is 0. And I got it right. So that is all I'm going to do. Hopefully that helps you guys. If you've been having issues with the homework, I hope that that helps. Remember that it is due tonight at midnight. So if you haven't completed it, do your best to finish it by tonight at midnight. Okay, it's a new year, new you. If you haven't been keeping up with your homework, now's your chance to start back on track, to get your grades back up, and to, do as best as you can, because practice makes perfect. The more homework you do, the better you actually end up being at math. All right, thank you for joining me today, guys. Make sure that you also complete the Google form that is in the assignment that I gave you guys today. So there's 3 things that you should have done. Number 1 was watch this video. Good job, you did that. Number 2 was fill out the Google form with like the mystery question answers. Number 3 is the 4 practice problems that I also gave you guys, okay? So make sure you spend a little bit of time on that as well. Everything from today is due at midnight tonight. No questions. I will not be grading it after that. So please make sure if you don't finish now, finish later. Make sure you get it done. See you guys tomorrow.